The Grand Council chamber loomed impossibly vast, its curved walls stretching hundreds of meters upward, before disappearing into a holographic ceiling that simulated the galaxy itself. Ambassador Marcus Reed stood alone on the central platform, a solitary human figure surrounded by 73 alien representatives seated in ascending tiers. Their diverse physiologies, ranging from crystalline structures to gaseous entities, contained in specialized suits, all shared one common feature: eyes fixed on the human with contempt. The Grand Council of Galactic Species has reached its decision regarding humanity's petition for equal status, announced High Arbiter Vexlorith, his translucent appendages rippling with bioluminescent patterns. The evidence presented over these 3 cycles has been insufficient. Marcus maintained his composure despite the crushing weight of the moment. Earth's first diplomatic mission to the Council had failed spectacularly. 6 months of careful presentations, technological demonstrations, and cultural exchanges, all dismissed. Humanity has existed as a spacefaring civilization for merely 47 standard cycles, continued the High Arbiter, voice resonating through the chamber. Your species has yet to establish colonies beyond your home system. Your technological advancement remains primitive by Council standards. A low murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Zhril representative, a massive arthropod whose exoskeleton gleamed with embedded technology, clicked its mandibles in what Marcus recognized as their equivalent of laughter. Furthermore, Vexlorith continued, our observation teams have documented humanity's propensity for conflict. Your historical records indicate continuous warfare throughout your development. The Council cannot risk admitting such an unpredictable element with full rights. Marcus stepped forward, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. High Arbiter, with respect, I request the opportunity to address these concerns. The decision is final, Ambassador Reed. The finality in Vexlorith's voice silenced the chamber. Humanity is hereby classified as a Class 3 subordinate species. You will be permitted limited trade under Council supervision. Technology transfers will be restricted to approved categories. Colonization rights are suspended pending a review in 20 standard cycles. The implications crashed down on Marcus. Subordinate status meant Earth would effectively become a protectorate, subject to resource quotas and development guidance that historically stripped planets of their autonomy. Other species classified as subordinate had withered under such restrictions. Additionally, Vexlorith announced, the Council has authorized the establishment of a monitoring outpost in your solar system. The Draxian Consortium will oversee human compliance with Council directives. The Draxian representative, Admiral Kor, rose from his seat. The reptilian military leader's scales shifted to a deep crimson. A sign of satisfaction Marcus had learned to recognize during the hearings. The Draxian fleet will arrive within 1 standard month, Kor announced. We look forward to facilitating humanity's proper integration into galactic society. Marcus knew exactly what that meant. Draxian integration had reduced 3 other species to virtual servitude within the past century. This session is concluded, declared Vexlorith, a dismissive wave of his appendages signaling finality. As the Council members began filing out, Marcus activated his neural implant, establishing a secure quantum channel to Earth's Defense Command. General Rivera's holographic face appeared in his field of vision, expression grim. They ruled against us, Marcus said quietly. Subordinate status. Draxian oversight. Rivera's face remained impassive, but her eyes hardened. Understood. Initiate Protocol Prometheus, are you certain? Marcus whispered, aware of the magnitude of what they were about to unleash. The Council has made its position clear, Ambassador. Rivera's voice was steel. They've just declared war on humanity. They simply don't know it yet. As Marcus turned to leave the chamber, Admiral Kor approached, towering over him. Your species will learn its place quickly. Human, the Draxian said, baring rows of serrated teeth in what passed for a smile. The Council's wisdom is absolute. Marcus met the alien's gaze steadily. There's an old human saying, Admiral. Don't judge a species until you've walked in their gravity boots. A quaint expression, Kor replied dismissively, but irrelevant. In 1 month, the new order begins. As Marcus walked away, he activated a second communication channel, this one to the hidden human fleet positioned beyond the galactic rim. a fleet whose existence the Council had never suspected. A fleet armed with technologies humanity had deliberately concealed during their primitive presentations. "Commander Alvarez," he said quietly, "the Prometheus contingency is active. You have authorization to deploy Phase 1. The Council had declared humanity subordinate. In 30 days they would understand exactly how catastrophic that miscalculation had been." Marcus boarded his shuttle, his mind racing with the implications of what was about to unfold. The Council believed they were dealing with a primitive species, newly emerged from their home planet, barely capable of interstellar travel. This illusion had been carefully cultivated by humanity for decades. The truth was far different. Humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel over a century ago. The first encounters with alien civilizations had been handled with extreme caution. Earth's leaders had quickly realized the galaxy was dominated by species who categorized and classified others based on arbitrary metrics of development. Rather than announcing themselves immediately, humans had spent generations studying the Council from the shadows. They established hidden outposts throughout Council space, intercepted communications, and gradually pieced together the true nature of galactic politics. The petition for equal status had been a test, one the Council had failed spectacularly. As his shuttle cleared the massive Council station, Marcus received confirmation that all human operatives had begun their respective phases of the contingency plan. Throughout Council space, sleeper agents activated technological backdoors that had been planted years in advance. The Draxian fleet would arrive at Earth expecting to find a compliant, fearful civilization ready for subjugation. Instead, they would encounter the full technological might of a species that had deliberately hidden its true capabilities. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The Council's arrogance had blinded them to the obvious question: why would a species advanced enough for interstellar travel petition for status, rather than simply taking it by force? They were about to learn the answer. 4 days after the Council's ruling, Liana Voss piloted her unmarked shuttle through the teeming spaceport of Galta Prime, the bustling trade hub that served as the economic center of Council space. Unlike the official diplomatic vessels with Earth insignias, her craft bore the registry markings of a miner. Centaurian Mining Consortium, one of thousands of corporate entities that conducted business across the galaxy with minimal scrutiny. Liana herself looked nothing like a human. Synthetic chromatophores embedded in her skin gave her the blue-green coloration of a Talaxian, while subtle bone grafts altered her facial structure. To any observer, she appeared to be yet another alien trader seeking opportunity in the massive commercial nexus. She transmitted her falsified clearance codes to the automated defense grid and received immediate approval, exactly as expected. For 3 years, Operation Shadow had been placing deep-cover human operatives throughout Council space, establishing seemingly legitimate businesses, research outposts, and trading companies. The Council, in its arrogance, had never suspected that the primitive humans they had just subordinated had been studying them for years. Liana docked at her designated berth and made her way through crowded corridors to a nondescript meeting room in the commercial district. Inside waited 6 other operatives, each disguised as different species, each placed in strategic positions throughout Council infrastructure. "The judgment has accelerated our timeline," she announced without preamble. "Phase 1 begins tomorrow." Darius, disguised as a Valyrian administrator in the Council's Defense Coordination Department, frowned. "The Draxian fleet is already mobilizing. 27 capital ships, full complement of fighters. They're not taking any chances." "Good," Liana replied. "Let them commit their resources. What's the status on the quantum network?" Maya, whose cover identity placed her as a technical consultant for the Council's communication systems, smiled. "Backdoors are in place in 87% of critical nodes. Once activated, we'll have access to everything: defense systems, communication networks, power distribution." "And the fulcrum?" Liana asked, referring to their most critical asset. "In position," confirmed Rafe, the oldest of the operatives. His disguise as an ancient Zilthian philosopher had granted him access to the Council's most protected archives. "The device is fully integrated with the Council's central AI matrix. They have no idea it's there." Liana nodded, pulling up a holographic display of the galactic sector. "The Council's ruling was actually more aggressive than we anticipated. They're not just restricting humanity, they're planning to exploit Earth systematically. She gestured to a series of documents stolen from the Draxian military database. Admiral Corps has already drafted plans for resource extraction. Rare minerals, biological samples, even human genetic material. They see us as a resource to be harvested. The disgust was palpable among the operatives. What they don't know, Liana continued, is that while they've been observing Earth, we've been studying them far more thoroughly. For every observation post they established, we've placed 10 infiltrators throughout their systems. She activated another holographic display, this one showing a complex neural network. Their entire infrastructure depends on quantum-entangled communication relays. These relays coordinate everything from defense systems to food production. They're so confident in the security of these networks that they've never created analog backups. And we control those networks now, Maya added. Not yet, Liana corrected. But in 24 hours we will. And when the Draxian fleet enters Earth's solar system, expecting to find a helpless planet ready for subjugation, Rafe finished her thought. They'll instead encounter a trap 3 years in the making. As the meeting concluded, Liana received an encrypted transmission from Earth Defense Command. General Rivera's face appeared, stern and focused. The Council has just approved the Draxian request for additional forces, Rivera reported. They're treating the Earth operation as a full military occupation, not the administrative oversight they claimed publicly. That tracks with the intelligence we've gathered, Liana replied. How are preparations proceeding on Earth? The last civilian populations are being moved to the underground arcologies, Rivera said. Surface installations have been rigged as per the contingency plan. As far as orbital scans will show, we're going about business as usual, completely unaware of what's coming. And Project Lazarus? Rivera's expression tightened. The first generation is ready for deployment. We had hoped never to use them, but, she paused. The Council's decision has removed any ethical constraints. They've made it clear that coexistence isn't an option. Liana ended the transmission and stared out through the viewport at the sprawling galactic capital. Trillions of sentient beings lived under Council rule, most of them never questioning the wisdom of the 73 representatives who determined the fate of entire species. Tomorrow, that blind faith would be shattered forever. In her pocket, she carried a small quantum device, the trigger for Phase 1. Once activated, it would simultaneously compromise every defense, communication, and infrastructure system throughout Council space. No shots fired, no dramatic invasion. Just the sudden, silent realization that everything they depended on now belonged to someone else. The following morning, Liana walked through the grand public plaza outside the Council headquarters. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species moved around her, conducting the business of the galaxy. None paid attention to the unremarkable Talaxian trader who paused briefly by a decorative fountain. She dropped the quantum trigger into the water. It dissolved instantly, releasing its coded signal throughout the galactic network. Across Council space, the effects were subtle at first. Security protocols momentarily flickered. Communication relays experienced microsecond delays. Power distribution nodes registered phantom energy spikes. Then, one by one, system administrators began noticing anomalies. Diagnostic programs failed to identify problems. Reset attempts were rejected. Manual overrides were accepted, then silently countermanded. By midday, panic had begun to spread among the technical specialists responsible for the Council's vast infrastructure. Emergency alerts escalated to the highest levels of authority, but the more frantically they worked to regain control, the more apparent it became something fundamental had changed in the very architecture of their systems. Liana, meanwhile, boarded a commercial transport bound for the outer territories, her mission complete. As the ship pulled away from the station, she watched the first visible signs of the crisis. Security vessels moving with sudden urgency, communications arrays pulsing with emergency protocols. The Council had declared humanity subordinate. Now they would learn what it truly meant to be powerless. 29 days after the Council's ruling, Admiral Corps stood on the command deck of the Draxian dreadnought, Inevitable Dominance, leading a fleet of 37 warships toward the Sol system. The additional reinforcements approved by the Council had nearly doubled his original force, a precaution he had insisted upon after reviewing the historical records of human warfare. Primitive they may be, he had told the Council's military committee, but their history suggests a capacity for unexpected resistance. Better to arrive with overwhelming force and face no resistance than to appear vulnerable and provoke their fighting instinct. Now, as his fleet prepared to enter the final jump point to Earth, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His career had been built on successful subjugations, but bringing humanity to heel would be his crowning achievement. A species that had rashly pushed for equal status, now forced to accept their natural inferiority. Admiral, his second-in-command, reported, "All ships report ready for synchronized jump. Arrival will position us in high Earth orbit, with optimal deployment for the planetary defense grid." "Proceed," Kor ordered, settling into his command chair. The view screen showed the swirling vortex of the jump point opening, its quantum energy stabilizing to create a passage through space-time. As the massive fleet entered the portal, Kor reviewed the detailed plans for Earth's occupation. Within hours of arrival, his forces would deploy orbital platforms to neutralize any potential resistance. Then would come the landing of administrative personnel, the establishment of resource quotas, and the implementation of population control measures, standard protocol for bringing subordinate species into proper alignment with Council interests. The jump took precisely 12.4 seconds, depositing the fleet in perfect formation above a blue-green planet that looked remarkably peaceful from orbit. "Establish defensive perimeter," Kor ordered. "Begin scanning for military installations. Deploy communication satellites to broadcast the terms of..." His orders were cut short by a sudden alarm blaring throughout the command deck. "Admiral," the sensor officer's voice rose in panic. "Our systems are detecting. Something is wrong." Before Kor could demand clarification, the main view screen flickered and changed. Instead of showing Earth below them, it displayed a human face, a woman with dark eyes and the insignia of Earth's military command. "Admiral Kor," she said calmly. "I am General Isabella Rivera of Earth Defense Command." "Welcome to the Sol system," Kor snarled, turning to his communications officer. "How are they broadcasting on our secure channels?" "Cut this transmission immediately." "I can't, Admiral," the officer replied, frantically working his controls. "They're somehow inside our systems." Rivera continued as if she hadn't heard the interruption. "You seem confused, Admiral. Allow me to clarify your situation. At this moment, your fleet exists in what we call a quantum bubble, a localized distortion of space-time that we've generated around your ships. While it appears to you that you've successfully jumped to Earth, you are actually suspended in a pocket dimension approximately 2 light-years from the Sol system." Kor slammed his fist against his command console. "Impossible. No species possesses such technology." "That was a deliberate misconception we allowed the Council to maintain," Rivera replied. "Now please direct your attention to your ship's internal sensors." Against his will, Kor watched as the view screen shifted to show the interior corridors of his own vessel, where hundreds of small, metallic spheres had seemingly materialized throughout the ship. "What you're seeing are Lazarus devices," Rivera explained. "Quantum-entangled nanite clusters that we transported directly into every vessel in your fleet the moment you entered the jump point. They are currently attached to your life support systems, weapons controls, and engine cores." "This is an act of war," Kor growled. Although a sensation he had rarely experienced, fear, had begun to creep into his consciousness. "No, Admiral. This is a demonstration." Rivera's expression remained impassive. "The Council declared humanity subordinate without understanding what they were confronting. That error in judgment must now be corrected." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "In approximately 30 seconds, I will release your fleet from the quantum bubble. You will find yourselves back at your original departure point, with all weapons systems disabled. You will then deliver a message to the Council." Kor's scales had faded to a pale yellow, the Draxian physiological response to extreme stress. "What message?" "That humanity rejects subordinate status. That we demand full recognition as equals within 30 standard days. And that should the Council refuse or attempt any further military action against Earth, the consequences will be significantly more permanent than today's demonstration." Before Kor could respond, the view screen returned to normal, showing not Earth but the familiar space around the jump point they had departed from. His sensor officer's frantic voice confirmed what seemed impossible. They had never actually completed the jump. Yet somehow, The human devices were indeed present throughout every ship in his fleet. A message appeared on his personal command console. The appropriate council representatives have already been contacted. They are expecting your immediate report on this encounter. Choose your words carefully, Admiral. As Kor prepared to face the humiliation of reporting his mission's failure, he realized that humanity had orchestrated something unprecedented in Council history. A show of force without firing a single shot. A demonstration of technological superiority so complete that it rendered conventional military power meaningless. The journey back to Council space was the longest of Kor's career. His fleet limped along at sublight speeds, all faster-than-light capabilities disabled by the human devices that engineers were afraid to touch. The once proud warships now resembled wounded animals, dragging themselves home to report their defeat. Worst of all was the knowledge that waited at the end of their journey. Kor would stand before the Council, the same Council that had authorized his mission based on his assurances of success, and admit that humanity had not only anticipated their arrival but had neutralized their entire fleet without firing a single shot. The regular communications from Council headquarters grew, increasingly frantic as news spread of unexpected technological failures throughout controlled space. Critical systems were failing without explanation. Defense networks reported phantom intrusions that disappeared before they could be traced. The quantum communication relays that had served as the backbone of Council authority for millennia were experiencing unprecedented disruptions. All signs pointed to a coordinated attack of impossible sophistication. When asked if these incidents could be related to his encounter with the humans, Kor could only confirm the Council's worst fears. They had gravely underestimated the species they had so casually subordinated. As his damaged flagship finally docked at the central station, Kor was met not by the honor guard that typically greeted returning fleet commanders, but by a delegation of senior Council security officials. Their expressions made it clear the galaxy had changed fundamentally in the days since his departure. "The Council awaits your report, Admiral," said the lead official, not bothering with formal greetings. "I suggest you prepare yourself." They are not in a forgiving mood. Kor straightened his uniform and squared his shoulders. He would face his humiliation with whatever dignity remained to him. But as he walked toward the Council chamber, he couldn't escape the realization that had been haunting him since his encounter with General Rivera. The Council had declared humanity subordinate. But in truth, they had just awakened a power beyond their comprehension, one that now held the fate of the entire galactic order in its hands. The emergency session of the Grand Council was called less than 6 hours after Admiral Kor's fleet mysteriously reappeared at their departure point. Weapons disabled and systems compromised by technology that shouldn't exist. The normally orderly chamber had descended into chaos, with representatives of all 73 member species shouting over one another as fear replaced their customary decorum. High Arbiter Vex Lorith struggled to maintain control, his bioluminescent patterns flashing in patterns that indicated extreme distress. "Silence," he finally roared, the chamber's acoustics amplifying his voice to painful levels. The pandemonium gradually subsided, though the tension remained palpable. "We will address this situation with the dignity befitting this body," he continued. "Admiral Kor will present his report, and then we will deliberate on an appropriate response to this human provocation." All eyes turned to the Draxian military leader as he stepped onto the central platform. Once proud and imposing, Kor now appeared diminished, his scales a muted gray that signaled deep humiliation. "Esteemed representatives," he began, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "My fleet never reached the Sol system. The humans somehow intercepted us at the jump point and manipulated space-time itself to create the illusion of arrival while simultaneously infiltrating our vessels with technological devices of unknown capability." He activated a holographic display showing one of the Lazarus devices that had been carefully removed from his flagship for examination. "Our best scientists cannot determine how these devices function or how they were placed aboard our ships. They appear to utilize principles of quantum mechanics beyond our current understanding." The Zhril representative interrupted, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Impossible. The humans presented their technological capabilities to this very council. They are centuries behind the collective in quantum sciences. They lied." The simple statement came from an unexpected source, Tyrol, the ancient representative of the Zyronian archive, a species known for their comprehensive knowledge of galactic history. The wizened archivist had been silent during the original hearings on humanity's status. They concealed their true capabilities, Tyrol continued, rising from his seat with the assistance of a gravity cane. And we, in our arrogance, never questioned our assumptions. What evidence supports this claim? Demanded Vexilorith. Tyrol gestured, and a series of data streams appeared in the central display. These are surveillance records from 27 different worlds spanning the past 3 standard years. In each case, anomalies were reported but dismissed as equipment malfunctions or natural phenomena. The display shifted to show seemingly unrelated incidents, unexplained power fluctuations on core worlds, mysterious data transfers in secure networks, unidentified energy signatures that appeared and disappeared. When analyzed collectively, Tyrol explained, these incidents reveal a pattern of systematic infiltration. The humans have been studying us, gathering intelligence, and placing assets throughout Council space since before they ever made official contact. A stunned silence fell over the chamber as the implications became clear. Why would they petition for equal status only to reveal their hostility when denied? Asked the representative of the Kephalon Concordance, their tentacled appendages writhing in confusion. To assess our response, Tyrol answered. To understand how we view less advanced species. They were testing us and we failed. Admiral Kor stepped forward again. The human general who contacted me delivered specific demands. Full recognition as equals within 30 standard days, or consequences significantly more permanent than today's demonstration. The phrase hung in the air like a blade. This body does not respond to threats, declared Vexilorith, though his luminescence had dimmed considerably. We must show a unified response. I propose immediate isolation of the Sol system. No communication, no trade, complete quarantine until the humans withdraw their demands. An unexpected voice cut through the chamber. That would be unwise. All eyes turned to see Ambassador Marcus Reed standing at the entrance to the council chamber, his presence a flagrant violation of protocol since Earth had no right to attend emergency sessions as a subordinate species. How dare you intrude on council proceedings? Vexilorith exclaimed. Reed walked calmly to the center of the chamber, completely unescorted. Another impossibility given the security protocols. I'm here as a courtesy, he said, his voice steady. To ensure there are no further misunderstandings, he gestured, and the central holographic display changed to show real-time images of various council worlds, the capital cities, orbital defense stations, power distribution hubs. As we speak, 217 critical infrastructure systems across council space are under human control, Reed stated. Power grids, atmospheric processors, gravity stabilizers, communication networks. We could shut them down with a single command. He paused, letting the horrifying reality sink in. We won't, of course. Unlike the Council, we don't believe in collective punishment. We don't subjugate other species simply because we can. What do you want? Asked Vexilorith, all pretense of authority now gone from his voice. Exactly what we originally requested, equal status with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Nothing more, nothing less. Reed's expression remained neutral. The Draxian fleet has been returned intact as a show of good faith. No lives were lost today because we chose restraint. He turned to address the entire chamber. For thousands of years, this council has divided species into hierarchies based on arbitrary metrics of development. Those deemed worthy receive privileges. Those deemed lacking are exploited. This system ends now. Reed walked in a slow circle, making eye contact with representatives from each sector. Humanity has no desire for conquest or dominion, but neither will we accept subordination. We offer the Council a choice, evolution or obsolescence. Before anyone could respond, he placed a small device on the floor, a miniature version of the Lazarus spheres found on the Draxian ships. This will activate in exactly 30 standard days, he explained. If the Council has voted to recognize Earth and any other subordinate species as equals by then, it will simply disappear. If not, he let the implication hang in the air. You cannot threaten this body, Vexilorith said, but the protest sounded hollow even to his own hearing. This isn't a threat, Reed replied. It's an invitation to progress. Humanity spent much of its history divided by the same kind of hierarchical thinking that plagues this council. We learned through much suffering that true strength comes from cooperation between equals, not domination of the weak by the strong. He stepped back, preparing to leave. 30 days, esteemed representatives. Choose wisely. As Reed walked out, the once mighty council, the supreme authority in the galaxy for 12,000 years, sat in stunned silence, confronting a reality none had imagined possible. A subordinate species had not only rejected their judgment, but had revealed the entire council system to be vulnerable in ways they had never conceived. The following days brought further revelations that deepened the crisis. Subordinate species throughout council space, emboldened by humanity's stand, began questioning their status. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. The carefully maintained hierarchy that had structured galactic society for millennia was unraveling. Most disturbing of all were the discoveries being made by the Council's top scientists as they examined the Lazarus devices and attempted to trace the human infiltration of their systems. The technological principles at work were not, as many had assumed beyond Council understanding. They were simply approaches that had been abandoned or forbidden ages ago. They didn't surpass us, reported the lead researcher to a private session of the Council's inner circle. They explored paths we chose not to follow, technologies deemed too unpredictable, too dangerous, or too difficult to control centrally. Vexilorith stared at the mysterious device Reed had left behind, now contained in a security field at the center of the council chamber. Its countdown continued, implacable and unaffected by any attempts to disable it. 26 days remained until its activation. 26 days for the council to decide if 12,000 years of tradition would end by choice or by force. The council had declared humanity subordinate. Now, as the countdown continued, the question that haunted every representative was how far humans would go if their demands were refused. Would they show mercy toward those who had shown them none? Or would they become the very thing they claimed to oppose? Conquerors who used their power to reshape the galaxy in their image. 29 days after Ambassador Reed's ultimatum, the Grand Council chamber had been transformed. The tiered seating that had once reinforced hierarchical divisions between species had been replaced with a circular arrangement where all representatives sat at equal height. At the center of the chamber, the mysterious Lazarus device continued its silent countdown. Less than 24 hours remained until its activation. The debates over the past month had been the most contentious in Council history. Ancient alliances had fractured, new coalitions had formed, and the fundamental principles that had guided galactic governance for millennia had been challenged at every level. Now, as representatives gathered for the final vote, tension permeated the chamber. High Arbiter Vexilorith, stripped of much of his traditional authority by recent emergency measures, called the session to order. Representatives of the galactic community, he began, his luminescence subdued. We face an unprecedented decision. The motion before us proposes a complete restructuring of Council governance, eliminating the classification system for member species, establishing equal voting rights regardless of technological development, and implementing new protocols for first contact with emerging civilizations. He paused, his discomfort evident. The motion has been seconded by the required 1/3 of current members. Discussion will precede the final vote. The chamber erupted into controlled chaos as dozens of representatives signaled their desire to speak. Surprisingly, it was Admiral Kor who was recognized first, the Draxian military leader whose humiliation had triggered the current crisis. I have commanded subjugation fleets for 47 standard years, Kor began, his voice lacking its former arrogance. In that time, I have overseen the integration of 7 species into the Council hierarchy. I believed, as many of us did, that this was the natural order, advanced civilizations guiding lesser ones for the stability of the galaxy. He straightened his posture, scales shifting to an unusual blue hue rarely seen in Draxians. I was wrong. What we called guidance was exploitation. What we called stability was stagnation. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Kor continued. The humans could have destroyed my fleet. They could have dismantled the defense systems of our core worlds. Instead, they showed restraint. They demanded not superiority, but equality. Their actions have forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about our so-called benevolent hierarchy. He concluded with words that shocked many of his longtime allies. I support the motion for restructuring. Next came Tyrrell of the Zeronian Archive, the ancient historian who had first recognized the pattern of human infiltration. In 12,000 years of council records, the aged archivist stated, 27 species classified as subordinate eventually achieved equal status. In each case, the process took centuries and came only after they conformed to the cultural and ethical frameworks imposed by dominant members. His wizened face scanned the chamber. But consider this. In that same period, 43 subordinate species became extinct, their unique perspectives and potential contributions lost forever. Some through neglect, others through exploitation of resources deemed more efficiently allocated by council administration. Tyrrell's voice strengthened. The humans have shown us not only our vulnerability but our short-sightedness. Our hierarchical system hasn't created stability, it has ensured conformity and prevented the very diversity of thought that might have prepared us for encounters with species like humanity. The debate continued for hours, with passionate arguments from both traditionalists and reformers. As the scheduled time for the vote approached, Ambassador Reed was invited to address the Council one final time. Reed entered the chamber accompanied by General Rivera and Dr. Eliana Voss, the deep cover operative who had coordinated the infiltration operation under the guise of a Talaxian traitor. Together they approached the central platform where the Lazarus device continued its countdown. Esteemed representatives, Reed began, when humanity first reached for the stars, we dreamed of finding a galactic community of equals, diverse in form and thought, united by a shared commitment to understanding and cooperation. Instead, we found an empire in all but name, where accident of evolution or head start in development determined a species' worth. He gestured to the transformed chamber around them. The changes you consider today are not merely about humanity's status. They represent a fundamental choice about what kind of galactic society we wish to build for the coming millennia. Rivera stepped forward. The Lazarus device before you is not a weapon, despite what many have feared. It is a quantum communication node, capable of linking with every similar device we've placed throughout Council space. Its activation will not bring destruction, but revelation. Dr. Voss completed the explanation. When activated, it will create a galactic network accessible to all sentient species, regardless of Council status. Knowledge that has been restricted, technologies that have been hoarded, historical records that have been suppressed, all will become available to any civilization capable of accessing the quantum frequency. The implications sent shockwaves through the chamber. You would dismantle millennia of careful information control, asked the representative of the Medusan Synod, their crystalline form vibrating with alarm. We would end the artificial scarcity of knowledge, Reed corrected. The Council's greatest crime has not been military domination but intellectual suppression. Species deemed not ready for certain concepts have been deliberately kept ignorant, their development stunted to maintain the established order. Rivera addressed the security concerns directly. The network includes safeguards against weaponization. Information that could lead directly to planetary destruction or biological warfare is algorithmically restricted. But the fundamental sciences, philosophical concepts, and historical records belong to all sentient beings. As the time for the vote approached, Vexilorith posed one final question. And if we reject these changes? If we vote to maintain the system that has preserved galactic peace for thousands of years? Reed's response was measured. Then the network activates anyway, and the subordinate species you've kept ignorant will learn the truth. They will discover that their protectors have been their jailers. What happens after that would be beyond our control or prediction. The vote, when it came, wasn't unanimous. 17 representatives, mostly from species that had benefited most from the hierarchical system, registered their opposition. But the overwhelming majority, 56 representatives, voted in favor of the restructuring. As the result was announced, Reed approached the Lazarus device and placed his hand upon it. The countdown stopped and the sphere transformed, unfolding like a geometric flower to reveal a pulsing core of blue-white energy. The network is now active, he announced, but modified to reflect the Council's decision. Rather than a unilateral human action, It becomes a shared resource, jointly administered by all species. In the days that followed, the galaxy experienced upheaval, unlike anything in recorded history. The sudden accessibility of knowledge that had been hoarded by dominant species led to rapid technological advancement among formerly subordinate civilizations. Ancient grievances surfaced alongside new possibilities for cooperation. Ambassador Reed remained on the Central Council world, working with representatives from across the galaxy to implement the new governance structures. The transition was not always smooth. Millennia of hierarchical thinking could not be undone in days or weeks, but the fundamental shift had begun. 3 months after the vote, Reed met privately with Vexilorith, the former High Arbiter who now served as one of 7 rotating council coordinators. "I never anticipated this outcome," Vexilorith admitted, his bioluminescence patterns showing complex emotions. "When we declared humanity subordinate, we believed we were following the wisdom of 12,000 years of galactic governance." Reed smiled. History is filled with systems that persisted not because they were just, but because they benefited those with power to maintain them. "Your species could have simply conquered us," Vexilorith observed. "You had the capability. Why choose this path instead?" "Because we've seen where that leads," Reed replied. "Earth's history is filled with empires that rose through domination and fell through resistance. True stability doesn't come from control, but from cooperation." He gestured toward the window, where ships from dozens of species moved through the orbital lanes around the Council world, many of them from civilizations that, until recently, had been forbidden from approaching the galactic capital. "The Council declared humanity subordinate because you measured advancement only by technological achievement," Reed said. "But the true measure of a civilization isn't the power of its weapons or the efficiency of its economy. It's the wisdom to use knowledge for the benefit of all." Outside, the first ships from newly recognized species were arriving, bringing representatives who would join the expanded council. The galaxy was entering an era of unprecedented change, not through conquest or revolution, but through the simple recognition that diversity of perspective was strength, not weakness. The council had declared humanity subordinate. Now they worked alongside humans as equals, building a galactic society where no species would ever need to beg for mercy again.